Have you ever wondered why certain messages reach you just when you need them most? Maybe you're going through something so difficult right now that you can hardly see a way out. It could be that the weight of the world is crushing you, that questions are piling up, or that your faith is wavering. I want you to know one thing: this message is not a fluke. It's not here by coincidence. You are about to hear something that could change the course of your life. You are chosen. Yes, chosen by God for a greater purpose, even if you can't see it yet. Perhaps discouragement has taken over. Perhaps the struggles of everyday life have silenced that inner voice that once gave you courage. But now, as you listen to this message, it's time to awaken the sleeping giant in you. This is the time to remember who you are in Christ, to rekindle the flame of your faith and to recognize that God is with you, even in the midst of the storms. Think of all the times you doubted, all the times you thought you were alone, that no one saw or heard your pain. I want to tell you with complete conviction, God has never taken his eyes off you. He has never abandoned you. He knows every tear you've shed, every prayer you've whispered in the silence. And he has something great in store for your life. Now, before we go any further, I want you to pay close attention. Your struggle is not the end of your story. What you're facing now is just one chapter of something much bigger. God is writing a beautiful story about your life. And just like in any good story, the moments of greatest difficulty are the ones that precede the greatest victories. The Bible gives us powerful examples of people who faced the impossible and emerged victorious. Let's talk about Joseph. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery and unjustly imprisoned for something he didn't commit. Imagine how desperate that must have been for him. Joseph had every reason in the world to give up, to question God and the purpose he had for his life. But Joseph didn't give up. He trusted in God's plan, even when everything seemed to be against him. Genesis 50 verse 20 tells us something extraordinary. You planned evil against me, but God turned it into good to accomplish what is now being done, to save many lives. Look at what that means. Joseph's struggle was not the end of his story. It was just the process through which God took him to fulfill a much greater purpose. He came out of the pit and into the palace, not by his own strength, but by the power and grace of God. And that's exactly what God is doing in your life right now. You may be in the pit, facing pain, loss, frustration, but God hasn't finished your story. Believe me, prison is not the final destination, and the suffering you feel now is only preparation for something much greater. Romans 8 verse 28 states, "We know that God works all things for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." And do you know what that means? That even the sleepless nights, the tears shed and the moments of doubt are working for your good. God is lining everything up, even if you can't see the whole picture yet. So don't give up. Your struggle is not a mistake or a punishment, it is preparation for victory. God is an expert at turning the impossible into the possible. He takes the pieces of a broken life and creates something extraordinary. He makes paths where there are none, and he's doing it for you now. Shall we talk about waiting? Maybe you're feeling like you're in an endless period of waiting. You pray, you seek, but nothing seems to move. God's silence can seem overwhelming, but I want you to know that God's delays are never denials. He has not forgotten you. Remember Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a son, but the fulfillment of that promise took years. They must have faced doubts, frustrations, and moments of disbelief, but at the right time, God fulfilled his word. And that's how he works. He never fails. You are chosen. You are loved. And God is writing an incredible story with your life. Trust in the process. Now that you understand that your struggle is not the end, let's talk about something that many of us have difficulty dealing with: waiting. Waiting can be the most challenging moment in our walk with God. It tests our patience, our faith, and often makes us question the purpose of everything. Maybe you've been praying for years for an answer, a miracle, or a change in your life, and nothing seems to happen. But I want you to know a powerful truth: God's delays are not denials. God never forgets a promise. He is faithful and fulfills everything he says. But there is something we need to understand: God's timing is perfect. He is neither late nor early. He acts at exactly the right moment. We often get frustrated because we want things to happen in our own time, but God, in his infinite wisdom, knows exactly what is best for us and when we are ready to receive it. Look at the story of David. Before becoming king of Israel, he was anointed by Samuel at a young age. God chose him to reign, but before he could take the throne, David faced years of persecution from Saul. He went through deserts, caves, and constant danger, being treated as an enemy, even though God had promised him the throne. Imagine David's anguish, knowing that he had been chosen, but having to wait so long to see God's promise fulfilled. But during this time, God was working in David's heart. He was teaching David to be a leader after his own heart. He was shaping David's character, strengthening his faith and trust. And at the right time, when David was ready, God placed him on the throne. The lesson we learn from this is clear. God uses waiting to prepare us for what he has in store. While you wait, I want you to understand something very important. Waiting is not inactivity. Waiting on God doesn't mean sitting back and crossing your arms. It means trusting him while you continue to do your part. It means being faithful in the little, knowing that God is faithful to put you over the much. Isaiah 40 verse 31 gives us an incredible promise. But those who hope in the Lord renew their strength. They soar like eagles. They run and do not grow weary. They walk and do not grow tired. While you wait, God is strengthening you. He is shaping you, building endurance in you, preparing you for what he has in store. Have you ever stopped to think that the desert is often a necessary stage before reaching the promised land? When God delivered the Israelites from Egypt, he didn't take them directly to Canaan. They had to pass through the desert. Why? Because the desert was a place of preparation. It was in the desert that God taught the Israelites to trust him. It was there that they learned to depend on God's provision. The manna that fell from heaven, the water that flowed from the rock, the cloud that guided them by day and the fire that warmed them by night. The desert was the training ground for victory. Perhaps you feel like you're in the desert right now. It may seem that everything around you is dry, barren, and lifeless. But I need you to understand something. The desert is not a place of destruction, but of preparation. God is using this time to shape you, to remove from you everything that doesn't belong in the next phase of your life. He is strengthening you, teaching you, and refining you. You see, in the desert, God wasn't just taking the Israelites to the promised land. He was preparing them to be able to live in the promised land. And that's exactly what he's doing with you. God doesn't just want to take you to the place of promise. He wants to prepare you so that, when you get there, you'll be ready to enjoy the blessing. So don't give up in the desert. Don't let tiredness or frustration turn you back. Remember that the desert is not your final destination. It's just a passage. And God is with you every step of the way. He sees you. He hears your prayers. He understands the weight you carry. But he wants you to trust him, even when you can't see what he's doing. Because, believe me, God is at work. He is moving mountains that you don't even know exist. He is aligning people, resources, and circumstances so that, at the right time, everything will fall into place perfectly. Your wait is not in vain. God is orchestrating something much bigger than you can imagine. So keep going. Keep believing. Keep praying. Because at the right time, God will do exactly what he has promised. Now that we understand how God uses battles and deserts to shape us, I want to bring you to a crucial point: the transforming power of faith. Maybe you're on the verge of giving up. The weight of tiredness, the constant struggles, the promises that haven't yet come true. It seems too much. But listen carefully. It is precisely at these moments that faith becomes the key to your victory. Faith is not just believing that God can do something. It is having the unshakable confidence that he is already doing it. It is a certainty that goes beyond circumstances, because it is anchored in God's immutable character. He doesn't lie, he doesn't fail, and he never loses control. Look at the story of the woman with the flow of blood. For 12 long years, she suffered from an illness that not only debilitated her body, but also isolated her socially. She had spent everything she had in search of a cure, without finding relief. Imagine her despair. What could have been easier than simply accepting defeat? But instead, she chose to believe. When she heard that Jesus was passing by, something inside her changed. Despite the crowd, despite her physical weakness, she found the strength to move. She believed that all she had to do was touch the hem of Jesus' garment to be healed. And that's exactly what happened. The instant she touched it, healing came. When Jesus saw her touch, he said something that resonates with all of us: "Your faith has saved you." This story teaches us that faith is an action. It's getting out of your comfort zone, even when everything says it won't work out. It's continuing to move towards the promise, even when circumstances seem to scream the opposite. Perhaps you're waiting for a miracle in silence, feeling that you've already done all you can. But today I want to encourage you: don't stop. Your faith could be the missing element to trigger God's move in your life. Perhaps it's time to touch the hem of the garment with your prayer, your cry and your surrender. Furthermore, I want to remind you that, even in the midst of pain, there is a greater purpose. Look at the story of Stephen, the first Christian martyr. He was stoned for preaching the gospel, but in the darkest moment, he saw something that no one else saw. The heavens opened, and Jesus was at the right hand of God. Even in the face of death, Stephen maintained his unwavering faith, because he knew that there was something infinitely greater than earthly suffering. This brings us to a profound truth: not every victory manifests itself here on earth. Some struggles we face are part of an eternal purpose that will only be fully understood in God's presence. But one thing is certain: God never wastes any pain. He turns every tear, every battle, and every sacrifice into something glorious. As Romans 8 verse 18 says, "The sufferings of this present time cannot be compared with the glory that will be revealed in us." Now, I need you to reflect on something very important. What is God calling you to do right now? Perhaps He is asking you to forgive someone, to trust Him more, or to take a step of faith towards a dream He has placed in your heart. Whatever it is, know that He is enabling you to do it. Faith is not just believing in what God can do for you, it is also acting on what He has already said. It's trusting that He is in control, even when everything seems out of place. It's declaring, as Job did in the midst of his pain, "I know that my Redeemer lives." So, my dear chosen one, this is the time to get up. No matter how tired you are or how many times you've thought about giving up, God is calling you forward. He is reminding you that you have not been forgotten, that His promises are certain, and that the best is yet to come. Embrace this truth: you have been chosen for an eternal purpose. God created you with a specific plan in mind, and nothing can thwart what He has determined for your life. But it's up to you to stand up, trust, and act. If this message has touched your heart, share it with others. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to keep receiving words that edify and transform. And remember, God is with you every step of the way. See you in the next video. May God bless you powerfully.